Hello students, welcome to BBA 407 Strategic Management. I am your instructor Mine Doyran for this course. Today I will lecture about Strategies in Action, Chapter 5. In Chapter 5, we bring strategic management to life with many contemporary examples. In Part 1, I will discuss different types of strategies, and in Part 2, I will discuss Michael Porter's generic strategies. Guidelines are presented when different types of strategies are most important to pursue. We will also discuss the balanced scorecard and compare and contrast financial with strategic management objectives. So let's start with objectives. Objectives are commonly stated in terms of growth in assets, growth in sales, profitability, market share, degree and nature of diversification, and so on. As you can see, the objectives should always be quantitative, measurable, realistic, understandable, and challenge. But also the objectives should be measured in numbers. For example, in terms of growth in assets, growth in sales, profit margin, market share. Here are the desired objectives, characteristics of objectives, and these desired characteristics are provided in Table 5.2. In addition to these desired characteristics, we also divide the objectives into two, financial versus strategic objectives. Financial objectives include indicators such as growth in revenues, growth in earnings, higher dividends for the shareholders, larger profit margins, great return on investment, higher earnings per share, a rising stock price, and improved cash flows. Strategic objectives are different than financial objectives because strategic objectives are measured in terms of larger market share. Also in terms of quicker on-time delivery than rivals, quicker design to market times than rivals, lower costs than rivals, and higher product quality than rivals. Other strategic objectives also include wider geographic coverage than rival firms. Oftentimes, there is a trade-off between financial and strategic objectives, such that crucial decisions have to be made. Ultimately, the best way to sustain competitive advantage over the long run is to relentlessly pursue objectives that strengthen a firm's business position over rival firms. This means using both financial and strategic objectives at the same time. Also remember that strategic objectives mainly focus on increasing the market share of the firm compared to rivals, whereas financial objectives focus on increasing or boosting the financial performance of the company. Now let's start with the balanced scorecard. Balanced scorecard is a strategy performance management tool. It is a strategy performance management tool which uses a mix of financial and non-financial objectives in evaluating the performance of the company. So it has four major components: financial, customer, internal business processes, learning and growth. Financial components always asks the question, how do we look to shareholders? How do we look to shareholders as a company? So, if you're using this component as a manager, you need to look at cash flows of the company, sales growth, operating income, and return on assets and return on equity. However, if you are using the customer option, the most important question to ask is, what is important to our customers and stakeholders? Again, what is important to our customers and stakeholders? Examples include looking at percentage of sales from new products, on-time delivery, share of important customers' purchases, ranking by important customers. Internal business processes, the third component, encourages the identification of measures that answer the following question: what must we excel at? In other words, what is the firm most proficient and efficient at? What must we excel at? Or what is the firm most proficient and efficient at? Examples include cycle time, unit cost, new product introductions. The last component includes learning and growth. This component encourages the identification of measures that answer the following question: how can we continue to improve, create value, and innovate? How can we continue to improve, create value, and innovate? Examples therefore include time to develop new generation of products, life cycle to product maturity, time to market versus competition. Here is the strategic management model, which is a very comprehensive framework. Now in this slide, I will discuss different types of strategies and give an example for each. So let's try to examine each of them and give some examples. Starting with the integration strategy, which is also known as vertical integration. Forward, backward, and horizontal integration are sometimes referred to as vertical integration strategies. All of these strategies allow a firm to gain control over distributors, suppliers, and/or competitors. Forward integration is also referred to as cutting out the middleman. Cutting out the middleman. So forward integration involves gaining ownership or increased control over distributors or retailers. Franchising is an example for forward integration. Franchising is an effective means of implementing forward integration strategy. Franchising is a distribution network to distribute and produce the product with the support and approval of the original owner. Again, franchising is a distribution network to distribute and produce the product with the support and approval of the original owner. McDonald's, Subway, Burger King are all examples of franchising. Backward integration, on the other hand, is a strategy of seeking ownership or increased control of a firm's supplier. Additionally, for instance, if Dell, a company like Dell, wanted to engage in forward integration, it would seek to buy a marketing agency that the company previously used to market its end products. However, if Dell wants to pursue a backward integration strategy, it has to take over or merge with Intel, the chips producer. Therefore, we say that it would use a backward integration strategy. In other words, Dell would acquire or merge with Intel. Only a backward integration allows a movement up the supply chain. Whereas horizontal integration, it is a strategy of seeking ownership or increased control over a firm's competitors. So the focus in the horizontal integration strategy is to gain control over a firm's competitors. This type of integration happens always in the same industry. Some criticize horizontal integration by saying that it can lead to a monopoly if a company captures the vast majority of the market for that product or service. For instance, on November 16, 2015, Marriott International Hotels announced that it would purchase Starwood Hotels for $13.6 billion, creating the world's largest hotel chain once the deal was closed. The merger was finalized on September 23, 2016. Here are some of the guidelines for forward integration. These guidelines summarize the conditions under which firms pursue forward integration. Please make sure to carefully review and study these slides. And here are the backward integration guidelines. Including horizontal integration guidelines, and we continue our discussion with the discussion of intensive strategies. Market penetration, market development, and product development are sometimes referred to as intensive strategies. These strategies are called intensive because they require intensive efforts to improve firms' performance and especially competitive position, Starting with market penetration. A market penetration strategy seeks to increase market share for present products or services in present markets through greater marketing efforts. For example, when a company like Macy's increases the number of salespersons, advertising expenditure, and publicity efforts, or when it offers extensive sales promotion items, we would say that it pursues a market penetration strategy. The second one, market development, involves introducing present products or services into new geographic areas. For example, the car company Ford Motor is introducing 8 new vehicles in India between 2011 and 2015 to capture increasing demand in the fast expanding car market in India. Another example is Walmart expanding in Mexico by buying local supermarket chains. The third intensive strategy is the product development strategy. Product development refers to improving or modifying present products and services. It also includes innovating new products and services. For example, product development usually entails large research and development expenditures, large research and development expenditures. For instance, GM, car company, produced ventilators during the coronavirus crisis. Estee Lauder, cosmetic company, produced hand sanitizers during the coronavirus crisis. These are all examples for product development strategies. Again, the guidelines for market penetration. The guidelines for market development strategies. These guidelines summarize the conditions under which firms pursue market development, and guidelines for product development strategies. Make sure to carefully review these guidelines. The third type of strategy is diversification strategies. And there are two types of diversification: related diversification and unrelated diversification. Related diversification happens when a business creates product lines that are similar to those it currently offers. So it creates product lines that are similar to those it currently offers. For example, a manufacturer of computers might begin making calculators as a form of related diversification of existing businesses. Or when a merger happens in the same industry, like one bank buying another bank, we can call it a related diversification. On the other hand, unrelated diversification happens when a company adds new or unrelated product lines and penetrates new markets. For example, if the shoe producer enters the business of clothing manufacturing, we can easily say that it is producing unrelated diversification. Or Amazon entered the food business by buying Whole Foods. Therefore, we said that it was following an unrelated diversification strategy. Here are some of the benefits of unrelated diversification, such as transferring valuable expertise, technological know-how, or other capabilities from one business to another. Some guidelines for related diversification. Some guidelines for unrelated diversification. Please carefully review them. And the last type of strategy that we will be talking about is the defensive strategies. Defensive strategies are also called a turnaround or reorganizational strategy. A turnaround or reorganizational strategy. When an organization restructures through cost and asset reduction to reverse declining sales and profits, we call it a retrenchment strategy. Examples for retrenchment are selling assets, firing workers, reducing expenses or costs in response to economic difficulty. Part-time or contract workers losing their jobs due to coronavirus is an example of companies using retrenchment strategy. Especially this has become very common in the hotel industry during the coronavirus crisis. Retrenchment can also entail selling of land and buildings, pruning product lines, closing marginal businesses, closing obsolete factories, automating processes, reducing the number of employees, and imposing expense control management systems. Here are some of the guidelines for retrenchment. The second defensive strategy is divestiture. Divestiture involves selling a division or part of an organization. Selling a division or part of an organization. Divestiture often is used to raise capital for further strategic acquisitions or investment. Divestiture can be used to get rid of business parts that are unprofitable, that require too much capital, or that do not fit well with the firm's other activities. For example, if there are poorly performing divisions within the firm may shut down those divisions. By divesting some of its assets, a company may be able to cut down on its costs, repay its outstanding debt, and reinvest and focus on its core businesses and streamline its major operations. One example for divestiture is the multinational media firm known as Reuters. Reuters is a multinational mass media firm, an information company based in Canada. Reuters sold its intellectual property and sciences division in July 2016. By selling its intellectual property division, Reuters basically or essentially followed a divestiture strategy. Here are some of the guidelines for divestiture. And the last defensive strategy that we will be talking about is liquidation. Liquidation involves selling all of a company's assets for their tangible worth. Selling all of a company's assets for their tangible worth. Recognition is most of the time recognized as a condition of defeat and consequently can be an emotionally very difficult strategy. Three guidelines of when to use liquidation. When an organization has pursued both a retrenchment and divestiture strategy and neither has been successful. If neither of those previously discussed strategies are successful, then the company must use liquidation. When an organization's only alternative is bankruptcy, when the stakeholders of a firm can minimize their losses by selling assets. Liquidation also happens when companies declare bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is a form of liquidation. Chapter 11 and Chapter 7 allow companies to organize bankruptcy. However, Chapter 11 is different from Chapter 7 because it allows the firm to restructure and come back. Again, it allows the firm to restructure and come back if it can. And all contractual obligations become void, such as debt payments and workers' pensions and benefits. Under Chapter 11, the company does not have to pay off the debt. In Chapter 7, on the other hand, the firm has an obligation to pay off the debt. The firm sells the assets and uses the proceeds of such assets to pay creditors in accordance with the provisions of the bankruptcy code. Here are the guidelines for liquidation. Don't forget, one of the most important guidelines is when an organization has pursued both a retrenchment strategy and divestiture strategy and neither has been successful. Only under this condition, liquidation is recommended. And in part 2 of my lecture, I will talk about Porter's 5 generic strategies. Thank you for listening to my lecture, and I will see you in part 2. Have a good day.